What if one of the simplest things that you could do for your bones takes just a couple of minutes, doesn't require a gym, and is backed by research? Because when we talk about bone health after 55, most women think of calcium, maybe vitamin D, or perhaps a bone scan. But we don't talk nearly enough about the kind of movement that actually tells the bone to stay strong. And today, let's change that. Hi, I'm Emma Sutherland, clinical naturopath, author, mum, and your host. With over 20 years in clinical practice, I've helped thousands of women and their families transform their health using evidence-based integrative strategies. If you're in your 50s, 60s, or beyond, bone health is no longer a background issue. It becomes something that we really need to pay attention to because bone loss happens quietly, often with no symptoms, no warning signs. Sometimes the first sign is actually a fracture. That's why today we're talking about one very practical question. Can jumping help support bone mineral density? The answer is yes, but in the right person, in the right way, at the right stage. And I'll also explain where a newer assessment tool called REMS fits into this conversation because many women are now hearing about it and asking me, why does bone health matter so much after 55? Here's the important context. In the study that we're looking at today, the researchers note that women generally experience bone loss of about 1% per year after the fourth decade. And in early post-menopause, that loss can increase to around 3 to 5% a year. They also cite estimates that up to 20% of bone mineral density can be lost in the 5 to 7 years after menopause. So by the time many women hit their late 50s or 60s, their bone is already an issue. This is why I think content like this matters so much for my audience. Not because I want women to feel frightened, but because I want women to feel informed, empowered, and be clear on what actually helps. Let's look at what the research paper found. The research paper followed pre-menopausal women aged 30 to 51 over 12 months. The jump group completed a jumping program up to 5 times a week, while the control group maintained their usual activity. At the end of the study, the jump group had significantly better bone results at clinically important sites, such as your hip and your spine. The paper's abstract concludes that a quantified jump landing program performed for 2 to 3 minutes a day, 4 to 5 times a week was osteogenic, which means it builds bones. Now, this is so exciting because it tells us that the bone does respond to short, targeted impact loading. Not endless hours, not punishing workouts, but with the right kind of signal. Now, I do want to be very clear here. First, the study was in premenopausal women, not women over 55. So we need to be sensible about how we apply this data. We can't simply say every woman with osteopenia or osteoporosis should start jumping tomorrow. But it does support a very important principle. Bone responds to load, and brief impact work can be so powerful. So why does jumping work? Well, bones are a living tissue and they adapt to the forces placed on them. One of the reasons jumping gets so much attention in the bone health world is that it creates a stronger loading signal than something like casual walking. This paper explains that jump loading programs associated with bone gains in premenopausal women had generally involved around 10 to 100 jumps per day, done 3 to 7 times per week over 4 to 18 months, with loading magnitudes of roughly 2 to 6 times body weight. These programs have been associated with meaningful improvements in femoral neck bone density during a life stage when bones would otherwise be expected to decline. So what does this mean in plain English? Your bones need a reason to stay strong, and impact gives them that reason. So for women over 55, the real question is not, should I jump? It's, am I the right person to jump, and what's the safest version for me? This is the conversation I really want us to have, because if you're 58, 62 or 68 and you already have osteopenia, osteoporosis, balance issues, knee pain, pelvic floor symptoms, or a history of fracture, then just start jumping is probably not good advice. What you need is the right entry point. For some women, this might be as simple as impact preparation, marching on the spot, brisk stair climbing, supported heel drops, sit to stand, strength training, small step-based impact. For another woman who has good strength, no fracture history, good pelvic floor control, and no major joint pain, a small amount of low-level jumping or hopping might be more appropriate for somebody like that. So the principle still matters, but the delivery has to match the person. I've linked the research paper below. So my advice is to take it with you when you next see a physio or exercise physiologist or your PT so they can put together a safe program that's individualized just for you. Now, where does REMS fit in? Let's talk about REMS because this is something more people are hearing about. REMS stands for Radio Frequency Electrographic Multispectrometry. It's a radiation-free, ultrasound-based method used to assess bone health. It can provide measures such as bone mineral density, T-score, Z-score, and a very valuable marker called the fragility score. So if you've heard of a Dexa scan, think of REMS as another way of assessing bone health, but it gives you more data about the fragility of your bones, not just how much bone you have. It can help people understand where they're starting from, which is often the missing piece. Now, I've interviewed Dr. Nick Burt on this channel, who is the REMS guru, so I'm going to link those videos in the show notes below. I encourage you to go and watch them. Now, once you know your bone status, your movement plan can become much more targeted. Now, the practical takeaway, what do I want people over 55 to take from this? First, bone loss is not inevitable in the sense that you are powerless. Age matters, hormone matters, but the bones still respond to what you do. Second is that impact matters, but only when it's appropriate for you. The research supports the concept that short bouts of impact loading can be super helpful for bones, but the study we're discussing was done in younger, premenopausal women. So older people need a more individualized response. Third, assessment matters. I love REMS because it gives me clarity on my bone status, as it's incredibly helpful before deciding to know what to do with your exercise. And finally, the best bone plan is never just one thing. It's usually a combination of the right movement, adequate protein, enough calcium, enough vitamin D, strength work, balance training, and the right testing and follow-up. So yes, jumping is genuinely effective when we talk about bone density. This paper shows that very short, regular jump landing exercise improved bone outcomes at the hip and spine in premenopausal women. That matters. It reinforces the idea that bones need impact to adapt. But for women over 55, the message is probably a little more nuanced. Maybe not every woman should jump, but every woman should understand whether her bones are getting the signals they need to stay strong. For many women, that starts with proper assessment, a smart movement plan, and progressing safely. So if this topic has raised questions for you, let me know in the comments. Have you ever had your bone density checked? Or have you heard of REMS before? If you know another person in their 50s, 60s, or 70s who needs this conversation, please share this video with them.